The moon expedition was found out to be quite controversial. While people still think that the last moon expedition was a fake one, a number of netizens have claimed that they were actually true. Pictures of the moon landing serves as a proof for that purpose. However, the real question in hand is, why has NASA never returned to the moon? Why were there no second expeditions to the moon? Did something happen on their last trip to the moon? Continue watching the video till the end to know more. Hey everyone, and welcome back to yet another video from our channel. We hope you guys are doing extremely well. In this video, we'll be talking about why NASA has never returned to the moon. We'll be diving deep into every aspect of this news, so if you are new to this channel, then make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now without any further ado, let's hop right into the video. Landing 14 people on the moon remains one of NASA's greatest achievements, if not the greatest. Astronauts collected rocks, took photos, performed experiments, planted some flags, and then came home. But these week-long stays during the Apollo program didn't establish a lasting human presence on the moon. More than 45 years after the most recent crewed moon landing, Apollo 17 in December 1972, there are plenty of reasons to return people to Earth's giant, dusty satellite and stay there. Researchers and entrepreneurs think a crew base on the moon could evolve into a fuel depot for deep space missions, lead to the creation of unprecedented space telescopes, make it easier to live on Mars, and solve long-standing scientific mysteries about Earth and the moon's creation. A lunar base could even become a thriving off-world economy, perhaps one built around lunar space tourism. A perfect human research station on the moon is the next logical step. It's only 3 days away. We can afford to get it wrong and not kill everybody, former astronaut Chris Hadfield recently told Business Insider, and we have a whole bunch of stuff we have to invent and then test in order to learn before we can go deeper out. But many astronauts and other experts suggest the biggest impediments to crewed moon missions over the last 4+ decades have been banal, if not depressing. A tried and true hurdle for any spaceflight program, especially for missions that involve people, is the steep cost. A law signed in March 2017 by President Donald Trump gives NASA an annual budget of about $19.5 billion, and it may rise to $19.9 billion in 2019. Either amount sounds like a windfall until you consider that the total gets split among all the agency's divisions and ambitious projects: the James Webb Space Telescope, the giant rocket project called Space Launch System, and far-flung missions to the Sun, Jupiter, Mars, and the asteroid belt, the Kuiper Belt, and the edge of the solar system. By contrast, the U.S. military gets a budget of about $600 billion per year. One project within that budget, the modernization and now expansion of America's nuclear arsenal, may even cost as much as $1.7 trillion over the next 30 years. Plus, NASA's budget is somewhat small relative to its past. NASA's portion of the federal budget peaked at 4% in 1965. For the past 40 years, it has remained below 1%, and for the last 15 years, it has been driving towards 0.4% of the federal budget. Apollo 7 astronaut Walter Cunningham said during a 2015 congressional testimony, Trump's budget calls for a return to the moon and then later on orbital visits to Mars. But given the ballooning costs and snowballing delays related to NASA's SLS rocket program, there may not be enough funding to make it to either destination, even if the International Space Station gets defunded early. A 2005 report by NASA estimated that returning to the moon would cost about $104 billion, which is $133 billion today with inflation, over about 13 years. The Apollo program cost about $120 billion in today's dollars. Manned exploration is the most expensive space venture and, consequently, the most difficult for which to obtain political support, Cunningham said during his testimony, according to Scientific American. Unless the country, which is Congress here, decide to put more money in it, this is just talk that we're doing here. Referring to Mars missions and a return to the moon, Cunningham added, NASA's budget is way too low to do all the things that we've talked about doing here. The Trump administration's immediate goal is to get astronauts to the vicinity of the moon sometime in 2023. That would be toward the end of what could be Trump's second term if he is reelected. And therein lies another major problem: partisan political whiplash. Why would you believe that any president said about a prediction of something that was going to happen to administrations in the future? Hadfield said. That's just talk. From the perspective of astronauts, it's about the mission. The process of designing, engineering, and testing a spacecraft that could get people to another world easily outlasts a 2-term president. But there's a predictable pattern of incoming presidents and lawmakers scrapping the previous leader's space exploration priorities. I would like the next president to support a budget that allows us to accomplish the mission that we are asked to perform, whatever that mission may be, astronaut Scott Kelly, who spent a year in space, wrote during a January 2016 Reddit Ask Me Anything session before Trump took office. But presidents and Congress don't seem to care about staying the course. In 2004, for example, the Bush administration tasked NASA with coming up with a way to replace the space shuttle, which was due to retire, and also return to the moon. The agency came up with the Constellation program to land astronauts on the moon using a rocket called Ares and a spaceship called Orion. NASA spent $9 billion over 5 years designing, building, and testing hardware for the human spaceflight program. Yet after President Barack Obama took office, and the Government Accountability Office released a report about NASA's inability to estimate Constellation's cost, Obama pushed to scrap the program and signed off on the Space Launch System SLS rocket instead. Trump hasn't scrapped SLS, but he did change Obama's goal of launching astronauts to an asteroid, to Moon, and Mars missions. Such frequent changes to NASA's expensive priorities has led to cancellation after cancellation, a loss of about $20 billion, and years of wasted time and momentum. "I'm disappointed that they're so slow in trying to do something else," Apollo astronaut Jim Lovell told Business Insider in 2017. "I'm not excited about anything in the near future. I'll just see things as they come." Buzz Aldrin said in a 2015 testimony to Congress that he believes the will to return to the moon must come from Capitol Hill. "American leadership is inspiring the world by consistently doing what no other nation is capable of doing. We demonstrated that for a brief time 45 years ago. I do not believe we have done it since," Aldrin wrote in a prepared statement. "I believe it begins with a bipartisan congressional and administration commitment to sustained leadership." The real driving force behind the government commitment to return to the moon is the will of the American people, who vote for politicians and help shape their policy priorities. But public interest in lunar exploration has always been lukewarm. Even at the height of the Apollo program, after Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin stepped onto the lunar surface, only 53% of Americans thought the program was worth the cost. Most of the rest of the time, U.S. approval of Apollo hovered significantly below 50%. Today, 55% of Americans think NASA should make returning to the moon a priority, though only a quarter of those believe think it should be a top priority, according to a Pew Research Center poll released in June. But 44% of people surveyed by the poll think sending astronauts back to the moon shouldn't be done at all. Support for the crewed Mars exploration is stronger, with 63% believing it should be a NASA priority, and 91% of people think scanning the skies for killer asteroids is important. The political tug-of-war over NASA's mission and budget isn't the only reason people haven't returned to the moon. The moon is also a 4.5 billion-year-old death trap for humans and must not be trifled with or underestimated. Its surface is littered with craters and boulders that threaten safe landings. Leading up to the first moon landing in 1969, the U.S. government spent what would be billions in today's dollars to develop, launch, and deliver satellites to the moon to map its surface and help mission planners scout for possible Apollo landing sites. But a bigger worry is what eons of meteorite impacts has created. Regolith, also called moon dust. Peggy Whitson, an astronaut who lived in space for a total of 665 days, recently told Business Insider that the Apollo missions had a lot of problems with dust. "If we're going to spend long durations and build permanent habitats, we have to figure out how to handle that," Whitson said. "There's also a problem with sunlight. For 14.75 days at a time, the lunar surface is a boiling hellscape that is exposed directly to the sun's harsh rays. The moon has no protective atmosphere. The next 14.75 days are in total darkness, making the moon's surface one of the coldest places in the universe." A small nuclear reactor being developed by NASA called Kilopower could supply astronauts with electricity during weeks-long lunar nights and would be useful on other worlds, including Mars. NASA has designed dust and sun-resistant spacesuits and rovers, though it's uncertain if that equipment is anywhere near ready to launch, as some of it was part of the now-canceled Constellation program. And that's all for today. Did we miss out on anything? Do you have any other insights on this news? Did you enjoy watching the video? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. We hope you've enjoyed watching the video. Please like the video if you have not already done so, and make sure to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to press the bell icon to never miss another update from our channel. With that being said, let's meet in another one of these videos. Until then, see ya!